Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to start soon. We're waiting for the room to fill. How's it going, Jorge?
It's going super good. We just had an earthquake at 4:30 in the morning and at 6:30 in the morning here in LA. So we are all jonesing and excited about, surviving.
Oh my goodness, and all the people joining us from LA, we hope that you're okay and not super scared about what happened this morning.
At LA, people who live in LA, we're used to crazy stuff. So this is just another stripe on the Tigre.
I know. Aren't you also from Mexico City? Also there, a bunch of
Yeah, also from Mexico City. So anywhere I move, there needs to be earthquakes so I can feel at home.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for joining, everybody. As the room starts to fill in, I'm going to start the intro. Welcome to another Wacom webinar. Today's session is not a class. It's an inspiring talk with one very special artist, Jorge R Gutierrez, director of the Book of Life, son of Jaguar VR, and El Tigre. Jorge will spend an hour with us today sharing his story and industry insights. This talk is titled My Journey from Student to Showrunner, and we hope that everybody finds some inspiration today to get a career started in animation. I'm your host, Elizabeth Garcia, Community Manager for Wacom. This will be a 1-hour session. We will let Jorge share his story before we interrupt with any Q&A. Please use the Q&A, not the chat, to submit your questions to make it easier for me to sort them through. This session will be available later on our YouTube. And for those of you that hate Zoom and don't want to get one, you can join us on Facebook Live. If you don't know Jorge already, please follow him on Instagram and on Twitter. He uses the same handle name, Mixopolis. And lastly, for those of you joining us from US and Canada, here are some codes you can use to get some discounts on Wacom products at B&H or Annex Pro. And that's it for me. Thank you, everyone. I'll be sharing your questions later with Jorge and moderating the chat. Jorge, the screen's all yours. Share your stuff.
Share my screen. All right, here we go. Thank you guys for joining me, and Elizabeth, thank you for the invitation. I'm super honored as someone who uses Wacom Cintiqs every day. I owe my life to this amazing product that has allowed me to make a living. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm just gonna jump in. Elizabeth told me a lot of our audience are students or people who are graduating or they're starting out their careers. And I kind of wanted to focus my talk on that, so that journey, because it feels really hard when you graduate and it feels really hard when you're starting out. And I want to sort of demystify how that process, while it seems crazy, it's pretty normal to go through a struggle. My nickname growing up was Super Macho. I'll tell you guys where that came from. As a kid, my grandfather sat me down and told me there's two types of Mexicans. There's machos and super machos. And the difference is the super machos travel the hardest road and get the better reward. So every day, every moment, there's choices to make. And you can make the macho choice and you can make the super macho choice, which is the harder one, the more noble one, the thankless one, but the one that hopefully makes you better. So that's where my nickname comes from. So I'm gonna be flying through these because there's a lot. So my talk is called My Journey from Student to Showrunner and Director. That's my son, Luca. I always say I'm just another kid from Mexico because all my family's from different parts of Mexico, from Puebla and Michoacan and Mexico City and Jalisco, Chihuahua. So when I say I'm from Mexico, I'm genuinely from Mexico. I'm from all over Mexico. I was just like everybody else. I was a little kid who loved to draw. I grew up in Mexico City, this crazy giant city that's sinking. My dad is an architect from Tijuana. My mom was very bohemian and played the guitar and sang. And so I just assumed everybody's parents were artists, and then it depended what discipline they were in. Those were the jobs. So art was everywhere. My dad felt that Mexico City was too dangerous, and it was starting to get a little crazy. So let's move the family somewhere safe, somewhere where my children can play outside. So he moved us to Tijuana. Tijuana in the 80s was the most dangerous city in all of Mexico, but that's where he grew up. So he wanted to take us there. And thanks to that, I got to grow up in the border, and I got to sort of experience two cultures at once, which kind of formed me as an artist. All I knew about Tijuana was what I saw on The Simpsons, and it was all true. It was The Simpsons documentary of Tijuana was like a documentary. I went to public institutions that taught art and painting and film and design as a kid and as a high school student. All these are like, you know, the museums in Tijuana. I would go to all these art shows, try to learn as much as I could. This is me in high school. You know, obviously this is Sandra Equihua, my wife. We've been together since high school. We both had dreams to make things. I remember pitching her, we could be the Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo of cartoons. And she laughed at me, just like she laughs at me now. But who's laughing now, Sandra? So things were pretty crazy. Back then, my dad, who's a little more conservative, said, if you want to be an animator and you love cartoons, you need to prove to me that you are good enough to do that. So you need to apply to the hardest school in the world for that. And if you can get in, maybe I'll allow you to study that. So my dad always put a fire to say, you know, you want to do something, it's going to be all or nothing. It's going to be the hardest thing or you're not doing it. And he definitely motivated me. So I go to CalArts to audition with your portfolio. I bring in drawings as a Mexican kid thinking, well, what the Americans want to see? They probably want to see Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse and, you know, Bart Simpson. So I draw all these drawings of that stuff. The guy who reviews my work is Jules Engel. I've told the story a million times. Jules Engel looks at my drawings and says, this is crap. He goes drawing by drawing, and he goes, this is nothing. You have no voice. You're not an artist. You're not saying anything. If you really believe you're an artist, you would have a voice. And these drawings tell me nothing. A copy machine could have done this. And then he gave me an emotional tattoo on my soul, and he said, an artist you are not. Try to figure something out in your life. So I'm devastated. I walk away. But thankfully, I left my painting portfolio on his table. And he opened that portfolio, and he saw these two paintings. And he said, hey, sad boy, come back. So I came back, and he said, what is this? And I told him, oh, these are the paintings. And he said, why did you paint these? I said, well, because I wanted to, and I had to. And he asked me what their paintings was about. And I told him a story behind each one. And he loved it. And he said, Usana Babich, this is your voice. This is who you really are. You do those drawings because that's what you thought we wanted to see. But these paintings are what you do when no one asks you to do art. These are just coming out of you. And that changed me. He said, if I'm going to let you into this school, but you have to swear to me that from here on out, you will not listen to what other people tell you to do as far as subject matter. You will listen to yourself, and you will look inside of who you are. And that was the beginning of my career. I got accepted. My parents didn't have enough money for me to go to the school because it was freaking crazy expensive. So we only had money for me to go for 0.7 of a year. And my plan was, I'm going to learn everything that needs to be learned in 1 year. I tried to take the amount of classes of 4 years in 1 year. Obviously, the school thought I was crazy. I got sent to the dean's office my first day. The dean, the president of the school, Stephen Levine, said, I'll make a deal with you, Jorge, because he heard my story and thought it was hilarious. He said, if you can do 2 years worth of classes and get the highest grade possible, I will give you a reward. So I went to work and I killed myself. I worked super hard. And after that year, the school gave me a scholarship. And then the Mexican government gave me a scholarship. And so I got to do my bachelor's and my master's at CalArts. I got to visit Sandra every 2 years to sort of recharge my heart. And that was the other thing I learned, that, you know, coming from somewhere where you think you're the best artist in your school and then going to a school like CalArts, I realized I was the worst artist in the school, but you can't choose what talent you're born with, but you can choose what to do with your time. And so I decided I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm just going to do more than others. And if we have a character design assignment, I'm going to do 10. And then I'm going to curate and turn in the best one. So I'm going to cheat by outworking everybody. And I'm just going to get better. And it worked. You know, Robert Rodriguez had a book that said every film student has 10 crappy student shorts in them. The faster they come out, the faster you get to the good stuff. And I took that to heart. So I made a ton of shorts while I went there. This was my first student short. Already I was obsessed with The Day of the Dead and a little kid dying. I did stop motion. I did live action with my family. And then after doing all that work, I became an intern at Sony, working on Stuart Little. And then I learned I did not want to be an animator. I wanted to tell stories about my culture, and I wanted to tell stories about people like me, because I was not seeing people like me on the screen. So I went back to school. I killed myself to finish my thesis film. Carmelo, it's all this stuff is online, by the way, if anybody wants to see any of these things. It's 8 minutes. It took me 3 years to make this short. It was super hard. I got super lucky, and it won the student Emmy. I thought I was the happiest kid in the world at that point. At that moment, a manager named Aaron Berger, who I'm still with, signed me and said, hey, you should develop this into a movie. And so I pitched Book of Life. This is where Book of Life came from my student short. And every studio I went to, Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, Dreamer, every studio said the same exact thing. No one wants to see a film about dead Mexicans. And, you know, I might have been a little too early back then. So then, thanks to that internship, I got called in by Sony because they saw a little internet cartoon I made using Flash called El Macho. I put it up on a website. So after spending 3 years working really hard on a CG short, I decided if I need to prove to people that I'm funny and I need to prove to people that I can make cartoons that are short, I'm gonna make a little cartoon with Flash. So I used Flash, we put it on screen. I got 20,000 views in one night. Sony Pictures called me in and said, we love your cartoon. We wanna buy 20 of them. And they got me a work visa, which, you know, as a foreigner is a huge deal. And that's how I started. And I thought, this is the greatest country on earth. They just give you money to make your own stuff. So I, again, worked super hard. Sandra and I got married. We had that wedding in Tijuana, which obviously, Book of Life, super inspired by that event. At that point, we felt, wow, we made it. And then the show was canceled. Sony at that point was too early in the digital streaming of cartoons. Not a lot of people had broadband or DSL. So that division went under. I jumped from that and I got my first job on television working on a show called Mucha Lucha, which was created by the awesome Lily Chin and Eddie Mort. He is from the UK, she's from Malaysia. They were in Australia when they pitched the show. So obviously when the show got here to LA, they wanted to hire Latino artists. And so I got to help out in Mucha Lucha, and I got to study how to make a cartoon with a TV production pipeline. And I learned a ton. I started doing a ton of freelance everywhere, and I basically did what I did in school. If anybody hired me to design something, I would do 10 and turn in the best version. And I just worked and worked and worked. From there, thanks to all the stuff we had been doing, Walt Disney TV Animation called us in. We pitched the show Pepe the Bull. You know, back then Disney wanted to do board-driven shows. Obviously, they were super jealous of SpongeBob, and we went nuts. We did this crazy pilot, and then they killed it. But they liked us so much that they hired us, Sandra and I, to work on another show called The Buzz on Maggie, which was the first ever Disney show done in Flash. So we worked super hard on that, and then they canceled that. And while doing all those things, we had 3 more shows in development, and we couldn't get past certain things. Some of our shows were too crazy or they were too Mexican. And that's kind of when I started to realize the culture can't be the star of the show. The characters have to be the star of the show, and it takes place in Latin America, or the characters have to have so much empathy that it doesn't matter what ethnicity the audience is. They will relate on an emotional level. So that's when we created El Tigre. We looked at all our favorite movies, we looked at all our favorite albums, and one of the things we found that we really loved was this idea that if you make something about where you're from and you make something about experiences that happen to you, they immediately become culturally specific, but emotionally universal. And so El Tigre is about a boy who has a dad who's a superhero and a grandpa who's a supervillain. I was a kid whose dad was an architect, he was an artist, and whose grandpa was a general in the Mexican army. And I admired and loved both of them. And my aunts would say, when you grow up, what are you going to do? Are you going to be an artist or are you going to go into the military? And so that's where El Tigre came from. The character of Frida is based on my wife, Sandra. Her mom was a teacher. Her dad was a doctor. Her three sisters went into medicine. Sandra was the black sheep of the family because she wanted to be an artist and marry me, right? A crazy artist. So in the show, Frida, her dad is the chief of police, her mom is a judge, and her sisters are police cadets. So it all came from our life. I usually design all the men. This was all done in Flash. We were the first show to use Cintiqs. We were the first show at Nickelodeon to board digitally. So we were always we embraced the new technology because just it was the way to compete with perhaps the older generations, because we didn't have their draftsmanship and we didn't have their skill, but we were willing to learn new things. And so that's kind of how we got in. Sandra designs all the girls. You can tell I come from animation and she comes from graphic design because all her stuff is way more elegant. We obviously collaborate a lot. This is sort of a little bit of the pitch Bible when we pitched the show, is a deconstruction of the nuclear family in Latin America. I love spaghetti westerns, so obviously Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is my favorite movie, and that's basically El Tigre, right? There's a good character, there's a bad character, and then there's a character who's kind of bad and grows a conscience. This is the show in a nutshell, right? An evil grandpa, a good dad, and a kid stuck between them, right? Good and bad, it's all in the family. Obviously, Manny and Frida are very much inspired by Bonnie and Clyde, but also because we love Mexican art, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo, the most famous artist couple in all of Mexico. Well, Manny Rivera and Frida Suarez, that's where the names come from. Mexican folklore is my favorite thing in the universe, so we try to reference all those things. There are no tigers in Mexico, but tigers are a huge part of the culture. So there's, soccer teams named after that, and obviously bands and movies and famous bandits. So that's where the El Tigre name came from. The dad was inspired by all the Mexican wrestling movies I saw as a kid that are terrible, but super charming. The grandpa also based on the famous Mexican bandits. We somehow convinced Nickelodeon that a gold sombrero could turn into a mech suit. And no one understood it. And I remember telling them, well, if you're Mexican, it totally makes sense. No one in Mexico thinks it makes sense either. But anyways, they let us do it. Then obviously Frida, inspired by all the rock en español and sort of punk girls that we grew up with. And Sandra was pretty rebellious. So pretty much it's her. The mom based on all the Mexican cinema ladies that we loved from the 50s. I had already written Book of Life at this point. So Sartana of the Dead, the villain in El Tigre, is the daughter of the two gods from Book of Life. And I was already dipping into Mesoamerican culture. Like I said, this was the first digital show, so we were doing a lot of experimenting, color scripts, painting like crazy. This is a little bit of the process. We would do color scripts first, then rough designs. So this is sort of the look of the show. We kind of went nuts. Show premiered in March of 2007, and it was a huge hit when it premiered. Sandra, I could not be more proud of her. She became the first Mexican woman to win an Emmy for character design. That's her in New York. We could not, we were so happy, but at the same time, I was so jealous because she won before me. And so for a whole year, she kind of rubbed it in my nose. So then the next year, the show won 7 Emmys, and I finally got an Emmy, and I could look at her in the eyes. So it was a huge deal. We, at that point, felt, we made it. We have succeeded. And they canceled the show. So after that, I went to DreamWorks. DreamWorks was interested in making Day of the Dead movie, I had Book of Life. I had turned in the exact same manuscript that they had rejected 7 Emmys ago. I just changed the first page and I changed the date, and I turned in the exact same one, and they loved it. They said it was amateurish and ghoulish and weird. 7 Emmys later, it was riveting and original and great. So I was there for a year developing Book of Life. It was called El Matador back then. And then stuff happened and they changed executives and development changed. And I was told, hey, Jorge, in order for your $160 million Day of the Dead movie to continue, we want it to be a hip hop salsa musical set in present day New York. And the main character can't be a bullfighter, and it can't take place in Mexico, and the main character can't die. And if you guys have seen Book of Life, it's a movie about a Mexican bullfighter who dies. So I quit, and sure enough, they canceled the movie. So at that point, my wife, Sandra, this is in Spanish because that's how she told me, she was pregnant. So, obviously you can't plan your life too well when things like this happen. So our show had been canceled. I had walked away from the movie. So we go back to Disney and we start doing another pilot. We worked super hard on this pilot while she was pregnant. It was called Carmen Gets Expelled. And it was about a rebellious teen girl who breaks the rules for good. And then we test the show, and then we're told, a show about a tough Latin girl who breaks the rules for good might not be Disney Channel enough. It'd be better if she was not a Latino girl, and it'd be better if she didn't break the rules. And I remember saying, well, isn't that every Disney girl? And they said, exactly. So we said no, and they said, all right, then your show's canceled. Then we had a kid, Luca. He was born in 2009. We went to Tijuana to take a picture because we love that stuff. Then Nickelodeon goes, hey, sorry about canceling your baby, El Tigre. Please come back, pitch us another thing. So at that point, Sandra was like, I'm out. I want to be a mom. I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. So I went ahead and did Super Macho Fighter, this show in development at Nickelodeon. It was inspired by my love of fighting games. We did a ton of stuff for Super Macho Fighter, and then it did not go through. Lots of stuff happened in Nickelodeon. They were teaming up with WWE, and so they needed the show to be more like WWE, and I did not want to do that. So then I walked away from that, and I went to Mad. Mad were super kind, Warner Brothers. They took me in, and I just said, just let me do Mexican things. So I got to do takes on a lot of pop icons and got to do sort of my Mexican version of them. Meanwhile, I was also painting on the side just to sort of do stuff for myself. And I was just painting and painting like crazy. And I started wondering, like, well, now what? I've had my own TV show. My movie doesn't seem to want to get made by anybody the way I want it. I guess I'm just gonna design and paint on the side for my career, call it a career. And then Book of Life happened. The studio in Dallas called Real Effects told me, hey, we don't have the budget for you to make a DreamWorks version of your movie, but we are a scrappy young studio. Let's make a lower budget version of your movie, but you will be allowed to direct it, and you will be allowed to sort of write it with whoever you want. I chose Doug Lyndale from El Tigre. And the only thing is, we've never made a movie, but you've never made a movie. So let's go all in on this, and you have to move to Dallas. And so Texas, here we come. We picked up our lives, and we just moved to Texas. Obviously, it was too crazy for anybody else to come with us from El Tigre, so it was just us. Real Effects was kind enough. They gave us a year to develop the movie. So Sandra, again, designed the girls, and I designed the guys. We got to hire Paul Sullivan, who's an incredible production designer, and Simon Varela to help us out. And we started just developing and painting and doing all these characters. Obviously, La Muerte was a huge deal. We almost got divorced designing her. It's a very, very tough character to design. Zibalba, we did this crazy cast of characters. The script got going. It's the Simon Varela drawing, and then it was painted. Right, Land of the Living. Land of the Remembered, oops, Land of the Forgotten. So all this was sort of the development we did. This was a huge, very important painting from a Simon Varela drawing, and Paul Sullivan painted it. And so we got to have a big presentation with 9 paintings and 3 maquettes. And I remember being asked who would be your dream producer. Brad Booker was my producer at Real Effects, and obviously, like every Mexican, I said, oh, Guillermo del Toro would be the greatest producer ever. And so we tried really hard to get to Guillermo, and it was almost impossible. He turned me down 15 times. I think on the 16th time, he finally had enough, and he said, bring him to my house so I can tell him no to his face. So we drove to his house. It was in August. It was super hot. I'm a big guy. He's a big guy. We're both sweating. They had told me, you have 30 minutes to pitch. So I've been practicing a 25-minute pitch for what seemed like months. We go to his house. We decide to pitch outside in the sun, which is a terrible idea. We put all these panels up, and as soon as I, opened my mouth to pitch to him, he said, Gordo, you have 5 minutes. So he took my 25 minutes and decided to only give me 5. I was like, all right, ancestors, give me the strength. I will pitch this 25-minute movie in 5 minutes. So I take the most important breath of my life. And just as my mouth is about to open, my people betray me on the house next door. There were like 5 gardeners with leaf blowers. And as soon as I opened my mouth, they went, órale, wey, and this wave of sound hits us. And I yell at Guillermo, Guillermo, should we wait till they finish? And he looks at me with his beautiful Guillermo eyes, and he says, Gordo, 4 minutes. And so I go ahead and I pitch the worst version of Book of Life anybody's ever heard in 4 minutes. And I'm drenched in sweat. I'm falling into the pool, and people are pulling me out. One of our producers was like, I've had enough, and he just left. It was the worst pitch of all time. The pitch ends. Guillermo's laughing, but he's not laughing at any of the jokes. He's laughing at me. We go inside his house. I look at him. I shake his hand. I'm like, Guillermo, I'm so sorry for the pitch. That wasn't that good. And he's like, that wasn't that gordo. That was the worst pitch I've ever seen in my life. So I stand up to thank him, and he goes, no, sit down. Gordo, I know, because gordo means fat guy, affectionately among Mexicans. He goes, Gordo, I know who you are. I just figured out that you made El Tigre, and I have 2 daughters. And Saturday mornings we would watch El Tigre, and we'd watch your mad cartoons, and we know who you are. I love your version of Mexico. I love how you see our culture. Of course I'm going to produce your movie. So at that point I stood up and I peed my pants, but I was so sweaty, no one could tell. And then I hugged them, and our liquids combined, came together. I'd like to believe that's when our DNAs, his DNA went into my DNA. And then he said, hold on, did you write a script? And it's very important what he said. If you didn't write the script, you're not a real director. So I ran to my car. We'd gone to a wedding. I had the script in the trunk. At the wedding, they gave us little tequila bottles to take home, right? Mexican weddings. The tequila bottle had broken. My script was drenched in tequila. I grabbed it. I ran back, blowing on it. I hand it to him. He grabs it with his giant, beautiful, meaty hands. He looks at it, and then he smells it. And he goes, this is a good script. And that was it. Guillermo became the producer on Book of Life, and I was the happiest man in the universe. Thanks to Guillermo, 20th Century Fox came in as a co-financer and a distributor, and I got to work with all the wonderful people from over there. I love Book of Art of Books, but I wanted our movie to look like the art, and so we tried really hard. The stuff you're seeing are paintings next to screenshots from the movie. We got really close. Again, it was very important to sort of capture the essence of the art. Then we ran out of money, which happens all the time in animated features. And we had not done The Land of the Remembered, which is, if you're making a Day of the Dead movie, that's kind of the most important place. And then our super genius production designer, Paul Sullivan, he came up with this system with our modeling team and sort of devise, all right, well, how much money do we have? Let's build the Land of the Dead in chunks. And I also think part of Mexican ingenuity is to just think, how do we make the most with the least, right? I feel like growing up in the third world, we're trained for this. So this is all the pieces we had, this and this, to make a whole land. And this is a breakdown, there's no sound, of how we did it. Obviously, it's a huge moment. This is a moment in the trailer when our hero finally goes to the land that are remembered. Café Tacuba music is playing. It's just a big epic moment, and you can see the breakdown, right? Taking all the lights, taking all the textures out, and those, I think it's 13 pieces. These are the 13 pieces, which is kind of my career. How do I do more with less? So obviously, Book of Life changed my life. I got to, make the movie while I was trying to sell the movie, so it was a very huge experience. I got to present it in Mexico, present it in Comic-Con, present it in Europe, present it in, we got to go to Brazil. It was crazy. I don't even remember the premiere in LA because I was so tired. All the stars came out, all the voices came out. It was freaking amazing. And so Book of Life changed my life. With that said, I was exhausted. After the movie came out, I needed time to rest. And so I kind of mentally was exhausted. And I started painting. El Pollo Loco asked me to paint a mural, and I did. It's here in LA. And then I had all this leftover paint, so I just started painting. And I just started doing lots of paints, and I would do color comps on a Cintiq, and I would just paint pop culture things. I kind of went nuts and painted a lot of stuff. I kind of got a lot of stuff out of me. As you can see, it was kind of a big deal. And then there was an art book about the painting, so I officially became a painter, which is kind of like a childhood dream of mine. And then we started finding people dressing up like the characters at Comic-Cons, and the lady on the left, she's in Mexico City. So it was cool to see our art start popping up all over the world, which has been incredibly rewarding. There's been people who really, really, really love the movie. In a weird way, they love it as much as we love it, and it's become a part of their lives. So that's been something unexpected. Obviously, it's been, it's like seeing one of your kids leave your house and grow up, and you see how your kid's been traveling all over the world. Then we got hired by Microsoft to do a Super Bowl commercial about Book of Life, which was crazy. Then Google called me in and said, hey, you like to do new things. How about you do something in virtual reality? And I said, I love Mexican wrestling. I would love to have people go into a virtual reality world as a mass luchador. And so, at this point in my career, I knew the best visual effect is emotion. And I grew up going to lucha libre matches. I also remember going to a bullfight as a kid and seeing a bullfighter with a prosthetic leg get hit by the bull and his leg went flying. And he stood up and he kept bullfighting. And I remember my father saying, look, Jorge, look what he can do with one leg. What will you do with two legs? And so that obviously really affected me. And so I started researching athletes that are missing limbs. And we started designing. This is a drunk doodle at a taco stand. This is more clean Cintiq drawings. And so this is sort of the cast of the VR short. And it's a wrestler who's missing a leg. And that's sort of what the show was about. I never worked in VR, and it was super exciting. Again, Paul Sullivan came in as a production designer, and we started sort of developing the look of this thing. And this was the sort of the climax. I'm spoiling the story, but basically it's about a Mexican wrestler who has a missing leg, and then in the climactic fight in the end, his son becomes his leg. And so that the idea for that came from my family. I have he's 11 years old now. I have a son with autism, and when he was first born, I felt as a dad, I need to be a little more responsible, and I need to be a little more conservative with my choices. And I told my father this, and he said, Jorge, did I raise a coward? And I was like, what do you mean, Dad? He's like, any success you've ever had was because you took chances. If you stop taking chances because of your son, what kind of example are you for him? What kind of a man are you? So that obviously really, really affected me. So then years later, when Luca was diagnosed with autism, he was 2.5 years old, and it was very shocking for us. And I'm autistic. I didn't know because I hadn't been tested. So at that point, I again sat down with my dad, and he said, "Okay, Jorge, you have a son with autism. What are you going to do now?" And I said, "Dad, I'm going to take even more risks, and I'm going to be even more daring with what I do, because I want my son to be my strength." And so that's where the idea came from. This wrestler, this over-the-hill wrestler, is stronger thanks to his family. So obviously, if you guys have not seen Son of Jaguar, I highly recommend it, even though I just spoiled the story. But it was a very, very, very emotional VR short. My goal was hopefully to make you laugh, but also make you cry. So if you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It was nominated for an Annie. It was nominated for an Emmy. And it was a very, very, very big experience. So what am I doing now? After doing all these things, I went to Warner Brothers for a little bit to direct a Lego movie with Chris and Phil. Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who are two of my heroes, the Lego movie guys. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And so thanks to creative differences, the famous creative differences, I left. And I got invited to a sort of incredible meeting where I was asked, what is the one thing you don't think you can get made anywhere? And so I pitched an idea that's like a 4.5-hour movie about a Mesoamerican princess who is half God, who saves the world of men and gods. And so that party was Netflix. And Melissa Cobb, the head of Netflix Animation, said, "I love that idea. Let's do it." So I got to fulfill one of my dreams. As a kid, my favorite museum in the world is the Museum of Anthropology, where they have incredible exhibits about Mesoamerica and the Aztecs and the Olmecs and the Mayas. It's just incredible. And the other thing that happened to me was, I said, well, I've seen fantasy about Europe a million times. I've seen fantasies about Greek mythology. I've seen fantasies about Chinese mythology. I haven't really seen Mesoamerican mythology on the screen coming from people of those countries, right? Like, I love El Dorado and I love Emperor's New Groove, but I want to make something that's coming from me. So I looked at mythology and I found that a lot of the myths that I really loved, especially as a kid, were very male. All the heroes were male, and all the women were the object of desire or the prize or the witch. Like, they were never the heroes. Very few female heroes in Mesoamerican mythology. And so I decided, you know what? The world we're living in now, everything I made, the heroes are men. I want to honor the women in my life. Obviously my wife, my mother, and my sister. These are three very, very big personalities. They're the pillars of their families. So I said, I want to honor them, and I want to make something that reflects their journeys, because I've had my turn. And so that's Maya and the Three. It's obviously I can't show you guys that much stuff. This is all the things I'm showing are things that are approved by Netflix. But Maya and the Three definitely inspired by a lot of traditional stories. But I wanted to do a fantasy version, just like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, being inspired by European mythology and European lore and European history. I wanted to do my version. As a Mexican, I believe that's my birthright, that I get to tell a fantasy version of my culture. And then the other big thing, a big decision I made was, I'm going to hack mythology. Mexico has a lot of toxic masculinity, and I want to go into the original myths, and I'm going to create my own. And spoiler alert, myths are made up. So why not make them up now? Why not hack them now? Why not change things that are not correct in the past now, right? We can't change the past, but we sure as hell can change the future by the choices we make in the present. So that was the big inspiration for Maya. So as you can tell, there were no giant jaguars being ridden by Aztec warrior women. This is all fantasy. This is a beautiful Paul Sullivan painting in development. I am literally sitting in that chair that you guys see. This is just a different angle. I'm wearing that hat, and this is me. So as the pandemic hit, thanks to the way we've been trained in animation, we didn't miss a beat. We're all used to working at home. Everybody got sent home. Netflix animation was amazing. So, you know, everybody got their Cintiqs. We're all working from home. We're still making the show. We never stopped. We've announced Gustavo Santaolalla, the guy who did the music for Book of Life, but also The Last of Us and Brokeback Mountain and The Insider and Motorcycle Diaries. You know, Oscar-winning Gustavo Santaolalla is doing our music. Good Morning America did a story on Netflix animation, and all this footage aired, so you can see some stills of some of the art. That's all I can show you guys. Someone on the internet cropped in. Again, you can see a little bit of what the show is going to look like. It's going to look incredible. I think most of these are Paul Sullivan paintings. Then at a festival here, an event, Netflix Animation gave out stickers of Maya. So now you can see what Maya actually looks like. We're working with an incredible studio in Canada, Tangent Animation, who's just, they're just phenomenal, phenomenal. And so that brings me 41 minutes to the end of this talk. This is really important stuff. I think a lot of you who are graduating, and a lot of you who just graduated, or a lot of you who are starting out in your careers, this is a magical time. Thanks to COVID, these are all the positives now. Thanks to COVID, where you live doesn't matter anymore. You can now apply to jobs from anywhere. And the playing field has been evened, because now it's the work that's being considered, not so much, do we have to move this person here? What if this person doesn't work out and we spend all that money to get him here? Work visa. This person now has to leave their country, get into the US, work in the US, and if it doesn't happen, you kind of ruin their lives. So my dream of being able to work for my own country on various productions all over the world is happening now. And I think that's a phenomenal time in animation. So really take advantage of that. Social media is where all your work should be. You should be easy to contact. If you have portfolio sites, make it really easy to contact you. The other piece of advice I like to give is, what you put out there is how people will view you. So we live in very cynical times. So if you're talking trash and you're insulting all the TV shows and movies you hate, or the artists you hate, and you're just putting out negative stuff out there, guess what? When people are interviewing you and they Google you, that's all the stuff they're gonna find. So be smart about that stuff. And then same thing, if you love to paint certain things or draw certain things or animate certain things or write certain things, put it out there. Don't hide it. Put it out there, and if someone is looking for something that you are already doing, guess what? They're gonna contact you because you're already doing it because you love it. So this way you get hired to do the things you already love. If you put stuff up that you hate and people hire you, guess what? You're gonna be hired to do the stuff you don't like, and you're gonna be miserable. So this is all advice I'd like to give starting out. The other thing is that struggle early on is normal. You can study every showrunner, every director, all your heroes. That's what I did. I studied my heroes. And I saw that no one's born and they come out of their mother and they're told, you're a director, you're a showrunner. You have to work your way up. And so that journey is normal. Everybody starts out from the bottom and works their way up. Obviously there's exceptions, right? But you can't go by the exception. You should try to go by the numbers. So I really, really hope you guys enjoyed the talk. Honestly, this is a wonderful, wonderful time in our industry. Take advantage of it. I know it's a little scary out there, but the other thing that we get to do is we get to escape into our art, and we get to escape into our ideas, and we get to create worlds, and we get to create characters, and that is a gift. So take advantage of it. All right. So that's the end of my talk. I think we're going to do 15 minutes of Q&A. Right, Elizabeth?
That's right. Thank you so much, Jorge. We have so many questions because you gave such an incredible talk, and you did tackle a lot of these questions already. So many students were wondering about advice to start out, how to fight imposter syndrome. So I'm just gonna read a few because we have you for a few more minutes, but you did tackle a lot of these questions. And guys, Jorge is very active on social media, especially Instagram. And if you guys want to add him and ask him some questions at his leisure, he probably will take some time to answer because he's very kind. So you guys are more than welcome to reach out personally to Jorge. He is always an ally. But let's read through some questions that you have. We have one here in Spanish, and if you want to answer it in Spanish, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. ¿Crees que en tu crecimiento en el campo artístico hubiese sido similar si lo realizabas en México?
Definitivamente creo que, bueno, en mi generación, para poder salir de animador era muchísimo más complicado en esa época. Y como mexicano, pues imagínate, las becas que daban era para estudios en el extranjero porque no existían en México. Entonces, creo que salirme de México fue la única forma de poder sobresalir, pero ahorita en México las escuelas cada vez son mejores, cada vez la animación en México se está levantando más, y lo que sí es que la competencia ahora es todo el mundo. Entonces, creo que también mucha de la educación la puedes encontrar en internet, la puedes encontrar en YouTube con videos, pero lo que te va a conseguir el trabajo, pues es tu portafolio.
Por supuesto, muchas gracias por contestar en español, chicos. So there's a lot of artists here who are struggling with being shy or struggling with sort of imposter syndrome. You are an incredibly, happy extrovert. You're very happy speaking. What advice would you give to students with a vision, with a voice, who struggle getting it out?
All right, so I think I was terrible at pitching, and I think it's like stand-up. In the beginning, everybody's terrible, and that's normal. The more you do it, the better you get at it. It's kind of like anything. No one's really good at presenting these things. Eventually, if you want to have your own show or you want to direct a movie, you're going to be part of a team, and you're going to have to communicate and speak publicly a lot. So if you're really bad at that stuff, I suggest you practice, you take classes, because there's no way to avoid it. It's super, super part of the job to communicate to people your ideas. The directing, the worst thing about a bad director is someone who can't make up their mind, or who is fishing to find what they really like. Communication is key. So I practiced a lot. I practiced with my family. I practiced with my friends. We would all pitch each other stuff. But yeah, being bad in the beginning it's normal. Now, being outgoing and being out there, again, that's who you're competing with. Those are parts of the job that they don't teach you in art schools. They don't teach you in animation schools. The social part of it kind of falls on you. So you have to do it, because you're basically going to a studio and saying, hey guys, give me $20 million to make a cartoon. And if you can't make them believe you can do these things, then it's going to be almost impossible. You could do it in another way, where you make something just so remarkable on your own that you're so good you can't be ignored. That's another way to do it, but that's a really, really, really difficult version of what most of us have to do. But getting out there is really important.
Thank you, Jorge. What, if any, concerns did you have getting such a specific cultural view as yours through a notoriously myopic, pale gatekeeper in mainstream entertainment?
Well, thankfully, those days are done. When I started, obviously, the most important audience was the US. And if it worked anywhere outside of the US, it was a bonus. We now live in a world where the audience is the world. So if you have a very specific project and a very specific view from your culture, but it's universal, then everybody's going to want it. And so I think it's the best time it's ever been. The industry's been shamed for having not enough diversity, not enough women. So this is a glorious time for people to jump in. I was, 20 years ago, I was outright told, No one wants to see Mexicans. No one would say that to me in a studio today. You know, they would call HR on them and get them fired. But yeah, so I feel like racism is our industry's laced with it. It's in the DNA, and we have to hack that DNA and slowly get it out. And success is the thing that I always say, Hollywood's a robot, and it only answers to money. So when a movie like Wonder Woman makes a ton of money, Hollywood goes, the robot goes, female directors can make us money. When a movie like Black Panther becomes a huge hit, the robot goes, Black heroes can make money. So that's how this works. But someone had to take a chance on those movies to prove they could make money. And once something makes money, then everything else is easier.
Thank you, Jorge. You spoke briefly about your education, and someone in the audience is wondering if there's a possibility to be an animator, a successful animator, without formal animation education, in your opinion?
Absolutely. But again, there's fundamentals that everybody expects. The craft, the technical knowledge you can learn online by watching YouTubes. Some people didn't go to school. I know plenty of animators who didn't go to school who are incredible, but they have worked their ass off to get good at it. That's the thing with this industry. No one stumbles into it by accident. You kind of have to want it, and wanting it is not enough. You have to do the work. You have to work really hard. It's like being a dentist or being a lawyer. Like, these are things that take a lot of time, and your peers have gone through that journey. So if you're not up to par, it's going to be really hard to get a job.
You also mentioned now that because everybody's working remotely, you know, there's advantages to that. But what have been the disadvantages for you not being able to collaborate in close proximity with your colleagues?
I hate to say it, but it's been wonderful because I don't have to drive anymore to work. I used to have to drive to Hollywood, and it was a horrible commute. I get to see all of my crew, and I get to see all my friends online. And I get to wear shorts and be barefoot all day. So I love it. If anything, I'm thriving. Again, coming from Tijuana, I sort of get fueled by adversity. And what bigger adversity than a global pandemic? So I am pumping full of energy. I'm super inspired. I feel so lucky that we get to do what we do, especially now. I have a lot of friends who work in live action and other parts of the industry who are not working, who are starting to struggle a little bit. So I take this blessing and I'm surfing it as much as I can. And yes, I miss hanging out with the crew, and yes, I miss seeing them face to face, but I'll take this in a heartbeat. I really love it. And I love that I get to see my family more. I get to eat with my son every day. So I don't know, I am in the minority, but COVID has been good to me.
I hear a lot of artists saying the same thing as you are. So a lot of questions regarding personal style. How did you find it? And how do you keep it consistent? There's a lot of questions about this, so I'm gonna bulk them up in one. Your personal style is very iconic. We can recognize your style anywhere. How do you develop it? And has it helped you or not in finding jobs?
So early on, I was told, if you don't have versatility, you will not find a job. And you have to make a choice. Either you become very versatile or you put it all into your own personal style. And so one of those choices is a super macho choice. And so obviously I chose that one. I said, I'm gonna develop my style. I found that a lot of my design friends and a lot of my friends in animation were just looking at animation. So they were referencing other animation artists. The biggest thing I learned at CalArts was, especially from Jules Engel, was don't do that. Don't look at other artists in animation. Don't look at other people like you. Look outside. So I looked at Mesoamerican art. I looked at muralists. I looked at African art. I love Picasso. I love Basquiat. So I looked at other things to influence how I draw and how I paint. And then I'm a big believer in Picasso saying of inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So I feel the same way about style. You can't develop your style. Your style will develop while you work, and it will come out of you while you work. And just like you, it will evolve and it will change. And hopefully, you know how to guide it. One of the things that I've also found is the way I draw and the way I design, thankfully, people ask me to do that. I've tried not doing it in my own style, and it's really hard for me because I'm so used to it. But there's nothing better, for me at least, than to get to do the stuff that feels like, oh, this nose comes from my grandpa. And these shoes are based on the first shoes I ever wore at my wedding that didn't fit me, but I just took it like a man, and it was super uncomfortable. So even in my designs, I try to tell a story, and I try to infuse as much as I can from experiences and people I know, because I think those are the designs that have heart. When there's a chunk of your soul into everything you make, I think people can feel it, hopefully.
Thank you, Jorge. We always feel the heart in your pieces, definitely. So you mentioned, more opportunities opening up because of COVID. Obviously, animation is king right now. A lot of motion pictures are being canceled, but a lot of our followers are in Latin America. A lot of our audience right now is in Latin America and is wondering how, from Latin America, do we get the attention of studios, international studios in North America?
Oh, I would say quality. Like, if any artist out there puts amazing stuff, if any independent studio out there puts amazing stuff on Twitter, on Instagram, and it blows up, everybody will see it. I mean, a lot of the artists on My and the Three are people I found on Instagram or people I found on Twitter. All directors, all showrunners, we're always looking. If you are putting incredible work, people will find you. That's the truth. That's what's great about our medium. There's no one incredible who's putting up all their stuff who's being ignored. Now, if you don't put it up, that's another problem. But quality will get you the eyeballs, and it doesn't matter where you live or come from anymore. So I think, again, anybody in Latin America, do incredible work, and people will find you.
Have time for one more question. I did see a few people here who are parents or older folk, either switching careers or considering switching careers right now. Does age matter in the animation industry? Somebody trying to break in, older, not a student?
Again, I don't think age matters as long as the work is incredible. In animation, you need to be good and you need to be fast. And so those are two things that generally are really hard to do. So it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're really good and you're really fast, you can get in. And all the information on how to become a great animator, how to become a great designer, how to become a great storyteller, it's all out there. It's all on YouTube. It's all on books. Like, this information is out there. It just has to be done.
I know I said that was my last question, but I have a really good one.
One more.
If you say that it's all about quality, and there's so much quality in Latin America, what's missing in Latin America animation industry that almost everybody wants to leave? Why? If there's so much talent in South America, what's missing?
Honestly, the missing piece in Latin America is money. A movie in Mexico, for example, if it's a independent Mexican movie, it's usually $6 million. So that cannot compete with a $30, $50, $100 million movie outside of Mexico. So it comes down to budgets. So if people are really good, big budget movies will basically grab you. In order to grow the industries in Latin America, these movies can't just exist for their countries. They have to travel and they have to be more global. And that's the big conundrum in Latin America. How can these movies, why does Amores Perros travel outside of Mexico and all the other Mexican movies that came out that year don't? Why does City of God in Brazil become a worldwide phenomenon, but all the other Brazilian movies that year didn't? These movies have to become authentically universal. So that I think is missing in animation in Latin America, and I think that's a huge, huge, huge part of what I'm hoping is going to start happening with Netflix and all the streamers, where they are funding projects from all over Latin America to be out there. So I think, again, it's there for the taking. It's just, it's on its way, but we gotta keep trying. There's not a history in Latin America animation of script writing. That's another issue, because there's not enough movies being made and not enough TV shows. So there's not you know, Latin America has incredible storytellers, but there's not a history of writing for cartoons and writing for animated features. So that's stuff that we need to work on.
Thank you for your transparency and honesty, Jorge. Hopefully this time, this big global pause that we're taking, reshifting priorities and going digital, hopefully it'll be a great equalizer for, you know, redistributing the wealth and hopefully bringing some of these amazing projects south of the border. I know that I see every day in the Wacom community the amazing vast majority of the talent that I see coming in is in Latin America. I'm always blown away at the amount of talent down there, unseen, unheard, and a little bit growing restless. So hopefully your story has inspired them, and hopefully many students listening into today, thinking about going into animation, see Jorge's stories as one of resilience, perseverance, and a lot of passion. I guess that's what it takes to make it in a very overly saturated industry with a kind of a white washed taint in it. So thank you so much for Jorge for bringing another perspective. Thank you so much, guys, for helping us bring this amazing webinar together. We are at top of the hour. It is 1 o'clock. I'm going to let Jorge go eat some lunch before he has to go to work.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you. And before I go, I just want to say something.
Yeah.
I want to again repeat it to you guys. The work we do, if it comes from an honest place, if it comes from your heart, there's something pure about it that makes it bulletproof. So again, we live in very, very cynical times. I really encourage you guys, the most rebellious punk rock thing one can do these days is to be earnest. So open your heart, let it all out. This is how we communicate. This is how we leave our industry better than we found it. This is how we use our art form to hopefully make the world better. A lot of us in animation work hoping that we illuminate kids from all over the world to be more accepting of people that are different than them. So what better way than with earnest, honest work that comes from your heart. So I beg you guys, new generation of creators, new generation of directors, don't be cynical. Be optimistic about our future and help the earth grow. So thank you guys. Elizabeth, thank you so much. Thank you to Wacom. And I can't wait to see what amazing things you guys are going to make.
We can't wait to see your projects. Thank you, Netflix, for letting us borrow Jorge for a little bit. And thank you, everybody. No sean cínicos, sean positivos y sigan creando desde el corazón. Es el comentario y el consejo de Jorge Gutierrez el día de hoy. Un abrazo grande a todos. Que pasen una excelente tarde. Thank you so much, Jorge.
Bye.
Bye, guys. It's a wrap. Welcome, team.